Yo, what up, YouTube? Let's see how quick I could keep this. I wanted to make a quick video about the Dakota Access Pipeline and why I support the protest, but I don't support a lot of the protesters. And this is going to catch me a lot of hate if anybody I know sees this, because this is one of those issues that people are very emotional about, especially where I'm from. There's a lot of indigenous and Chicano people who get worked up about this sort of thing. And I already did a video about a protest I went to on this topic, and I told you some of the problems that I saw with the movement. And so I'm going to expand on that a little bit about why I support the general idea, but I have really strong reservations about supporting this protest. And the reason behind that is because who I see associating with this movement. There's a lot of radical environmentalists and a lot of socialists that are using this protest to hijack it and to force their agenda in there. So I have a huge problem with that. You know, when I see groups like the Red Nation, whose goal is to overthrow capitalism, it's retarded. And the fact that these are the people promoting the protest, it raises a big red flag to me about if I should believe them, if I should trust them, if this is worth caring about. Generally, if socialists are the ones pushing something, it's a bunch of bullshit. Because they're liars, and it's a deceitful, dishonest, immoral, and evil ideology. So groups like the Red Nation out there instigating bullshit protests. And look, here's a big thing. I've mentioned this a few times. Blocking the road protest. Worst protest tactic ever. I don't know who is teaching people to do this. Actually, I do know who it is. It's these socialists. Because here's what that tactic does. It instigates violence. And the only way it could possibly work in your favor is if you had extreme principle, like what they had in the civil rights movement, who you people pretend like you're emulating. They had camps where people had to show up and practice nonviolent resistance, because they understood that the whole point of nonviolence is the image you create. You're creating the image of violence from the other side while you resist non-violently. So I bring that up because here in Albuquerque, when they did a protest, they went out into the streets, which you're not supposed to do. It's a stupid protest tactic. It makes people despise your cause. You make them late. It doesn't get you good attention. It gets you horrible negative press. And then people don't want to put up with it, so they try to drive through the lines of people blocking the cars. And then when protesters get challenged, they don't put their hands behind their back. They don't get arrested and go peacefully. They start punching the cars. They start acting violently. And then they look like they're the ones that are wrong. Because they are. You can't have it both ways. You can't say you're nonviolent and then act violently and then say, oh, well, it was just self-defense. Well, that's not what Martin Luther King did. It wasn't self-defense. They didn't go out there and provoke the cops and then fight back when the cops showed up. No, they put their hands behind their back, they went to jail, and they wrote about it from jail. They talked about it from jail, you know, and so it really bugs me when people use this tactic in such a deceitful way where the cops show up and then they play innocent. It's like, no, you purposely instigated the police response. You should get arrested to make your point. But now instead of getting arrested, you're playing the victim. You're saying, I can't believe the cops showed up. But you're just shooting yourselves in the foot. And I don't know how much this is going on over there, but I assume it is. I saw pictures of them blocking a road, and I saw people commenting upset about that. People are always going to get upset about this tactic because it's a stupid tactic. It's lawless. It provokes violence. People hate it. You will never gain support using this tactic. I can't say it enough. I don't know who is teaching people to do this. Stop listening to them. Fire them. Get them out of your organization. If you want people to take you serious, you can't use the roadblocking tactic. You cannot provoke violence. If you're going to use the roadblock tactic, you have to get arrested. If you're going to break the law, you have to get arrested. That's what civil disobedience is. You can't have it both ways. You don't get to break the law and then act like a victim when the cops show up. You go to jail. That's the whole way it works. I don't get where people have these crazy ideas about their protest tactics. So that just drives me crazy that people don't understand the flip side of what they're doing. And like the image of the dogs getting sicked on them. They broke the perimeter line, and that's something that they're not going to admit, that dozens of people ran across the line towards people with dogs. Now, whether the people with dogs had a right to be on that land in the first place, that's what I'm not so sure about. And that's what raises the questions. But the reality is they broke the line, and then the dogs got sicked on them, and then so it's not black and white. It's not like they were standing there peacefully and they just got the dogs sicked on them. It happened after they crossed over the fence, and like I said, that's a whole other issue. But it's gray area, and people try to paint it as black and white, and it's not that simple. So there is a bad element to this. Radical environmentalists, radical socialists infiltrating this, and they're making it about their thing. They're talking about, we should ban fossil fuels. We shouldn't use fossil fuels. We just want to protect the water. We're not even protesters. We're just water protectors. Except these are people who don't know anything about energy. They don't know anything about pollution. They don't know anything about oil versus coal versus fracking. They don't know anything about anything. They've never read an economics book. They don't know what capitalism is. They don't know what socialism is. All they know is capitalism's evil, and these are greedy, evil people. But that's not how you get things done. You don't get things done by just calling the other people evil. There is a rational reason why people are doing what they're doing. And the reason I support this protest is because I have a huge issue with eminent domain, and from what I understand, that's what happened here. Now look, when it comes to a pipeline, if the pipeline manages to buy all the land that the pipeline goes under, or lease it from the people that own it, as long as everybody gets paid for that land, then it's legitimate. Now, if the government goes in there and strong arms their way onto land that doesn't belong to them, and I think this might be a contested piece of land. From what I understand, the government is claiming to own land that the tribe claims to own. Now, I'm going to side with the tribe because the Constitution says that treaties are the highest law of the land. So if the tribe has a treaty that says they own this land, and the government is trying to force them to let a private corporation run a pipe through their land, I am completely against that 100%. And I don't even agree with the government using eminent domain for government purposes, but I am absolutely opposed to them using it for private purposes. So there is plenty of room to get on board with this protest, but the problem is people are ruining it. You're shooting yourselves in the foot. When you have these people out there saying greed is the problem, capitalism is the problem, you don't understand. You don't even know what capitalism is. Capitalism is private property ownership. Socialism means the government owns anything. Capitalism is why you people have a foot to stand on in the first place, because you claim you own the land. If you get rid of capitalism and you let the government just own everything, then they don't have to ask your permission. You don't have any recourse. They get to build pipelines wherever they want. They get to build mines wherever they want. You think socialism is going to be this unicorns and rainbows perfect land where energy comes out of fucking unicorn farts, but that's not how the world works. You got to understand, we use oil, we use energy, and there's no way around that fact. pollution is going to get created? Is it going to be from the pipeline? Is it going to be from the trucks moving the oil? If you block the pipeline, people aren't going to stop producing the oil. It's still got to move by truck. It's still got to move by train. Those trains and trucks have accidents. That oil still gets spilled. It seems like there's some reason to believe that they're taking precautions to protect the water in how they build the pipeline. And I get that there's a risk to this. And I think everybody gets that there's a risk to this. But the way they're twisting it is as if it's an inevitability that the river is going to get polluted with oil. As if that's what the company wants to do. Of course they don't want the oil polluting the river. On top of the fact that it would make them look bad, they'd lose the oil. People don't understand profit motives or markets. The fact that they don't want to have an oil spill on their record. It makes them look bad to do that. And they have to face the lawsuits of the people who get contaminated by the oil spill. Now, there's a lot of things that I could side with these guys on. I mean, they rerouted the pipeline. They say the reason is because it was going to potentially affect 100,000 people. Now it only affects 10,000 people. And those 10,000 people happen to be the Native Americans. And so people are calling that environmental racism. I think that's more of a geography coincidence that there is less people there and they happen to be Native American. I think if they were white farmers, it would be the same thing. They'd still be trying to strong arm their way through there. So look, I have a huge problem with the corporations using government as a tool to achieve their goals. That's not free market. That's not capitalism. That is cronyism. That's government stepping in to give an advantage to somebody. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with eminent domain. But the fact that a lot of these people are in there calling for socialism, saying we just shouldn't use oil. What's your alternative? Do you have an alternative? Wind turbines and solar panels. Guess what? Those need oil to produce them. It's not simple. Like, people think energy is we just use fossil fuels because we're stupid. No. This is so much more of a complicated issue than people are even willing to admit it. And it drives me crazy that people are just taking the elementary school route of pretending like you can boil this all down to a bumper sticker and keep it in the ground. Water is life. Brilliant observations. What are you contributing to the conversation here? And why should we take you serious if your whole goal is let's just stop burning oil, let's just stop using fossil fuels? Great idea. Where does that leave us tomorrow? You know, you don't think about the poor people who need cheap energy to keep their houses warm. What's going to be the condition of people in the winter if you have to control what you burn? And have you ever looked at the difference between coal and oil and fracking and all these different things? People who have never researched this, people who don't know anything about economics, people who don't know anything about any of this stuff are the ones who make the most noise about this issue. And that's why it's really hard to support it. And when I see socialists getting in there and these radical environmentalists who just want to overthrow the whole system of capitalism that this country's based on, that we have freedom because of, I just can't stand behind it. You know, capitalism is what your foot to stand on is. Our Constitution is what your foot to stand on is. If you were to make this a constitutional issue, I'm going to be on your team. Most Americans are going to be on your team. Everybody can relate to the government forcing itself somewhere where it doesn't belong. But what people are not going to agree with you on 100%, some people will, but I'm not going to, is people who say we should stop using fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are a crime against the planet, and all this ridiculous environmental stuff of you can't drink oil. That's not, nobody, it's such a straw man argument. Like, you're not being reasonable. You're not being rational. You're just spouting off propaganda talking points, and you're not acknowledging the situation of we need energy. And where's it going to come from? And my belief is, if you own the land and you don't want the pipeline going through it, you have every right to protest it. But if they want to build that pipeline down the way where it's not affecting your land, they have a right to do that. And if there's a reservation that wants to pump oil, that's their right to do it too, if they want to sell oil, because they own the land. And yes, there's environmental issues at stake that we have to find better ways to address environmental issues going forward. But we have to look at it from the perspective of there's more at stake than just these straw man arguments of the evil, greedy capitalists want to poison the Indians because they're white and racist and evil and they're capitalist and the whole system is just for the white man. And, you know, there's just so much bullshit rhetoric that you can't cut through it all to get to the heart of the deal, which is a constitutional issue. It's a legal issue. It's a property rights issue. But the people who get out there and start saying we shouldn't, it's the people who don't believe in property who are out there making the most noise. And you got to recognize that this is a problem, because it's one or the other. Either you have property rights and that's why you get to protest what happens on your land, or property doesn't exist and the government controls everything and everything's a democracy and the rule of the majority gets to rule over everybody else. And if you don't want a pipeline here, you get to decide where the pipeline goes. Or if you want to ban all fossil fuels, you can do it, even if that sends the whole country back to 100 years and everybody's burning fucking trees again and deforestation, and who knows what the consequences are, because you haven't thought about it. You're not weighing pros and cons. You're not looking at solutions. I'm not hearing any of that. All I'm hearing is no more fossil fuels. What does that even mean? Keep it in the ground. What does that even mean? What does that even mean? You haven't thought these ideas through. So it's really frustrating. And I feel like I can't say anything about it because people are so emotionally invested. And this comes down to the heart of the issue of collectivism versus individualism, because it turns into this tribal thing where it's about, this is about Native American solidarity and our spiritual endeavor to protect the water and protect Mother Earth, and this is just environmentalists and socialists using people to further their agenda, because it's people who don't have a solid grasp on the issue who get manipulated into doing protests and pushing for overthrowing capitalism. Even people who will understand that socialism is a problem don't understand that capitalism is not the problem that people make it out to be. It's not, the problem isn't property rights. The problem isn't people being able to trade labor and being able to trade property. The problem is the government overstepping its bounds. And if we could agree on that, you could get a lot of support. But some of these tactics, some of these allies, they're a huge red flag to me. I cannot support people who want to ban energy, who want to overthrow capitalism. If you want to overthrow capitalism, you're my enemy. I don't want anything to do with you. And you're a threat to the stability of this country. So, and to, everything, to the stability of markets, of culture around the world. Socialism lost the idea war. It's capitalism is not the enemy. Free markets are not the enemy. That's what protects your rights, is the fact that you're allowed to own property. You're allowed to own yourself. You're allowed to have a say. But you don't get that say under socialism. So be aware of these people who are trying to make it about collectivism. They're trying to make it about race. They're trying to make it about class. They're trying to make it about us versus them. But the reality is, it's the people, it's the government working with corporations that we have to be concerned about. It's not the underlying market principles at work. So, read up on energy, read up on tribal issues. I need to learn more about tribal issues, but and property rights are not something I'm an expert on, but I do understand that property rights are very important, and that's what this issue is a property rights issue, a constitutional issue. So the fact that they're making it an environmental issue, I think, is a huge mistake, and people are shooting themselves in the foot, and they're shooting themselves in the foot even more by using these idiotic socialist Black Lives Matter tactics of blocking traffic and getting people angry, because you could get support from a lot of these pro-oil people if you explained it in terms of eminent domain, if you explained it in terms of this is our land and we're not consenting. That's a good case. When your case is oil's bad, that's not a convincing argument. So that's my 2 cents for this Dakota Access Pipeline. I honestly hope that it gets stopped. I hope that we can, as a country, come together around property rights, because I think environmental issues will be solved through free market and through property rights and strengthening the role of property rights in our democracy. But that can't happen when we're embracing people who are calling for the overthrow of the system as we know it, who want to get rid of property altogether, the idea of property. What that means for Indian reservations, I have no idea. And if you want to know what socialism looks like, look at the Indian reservations and the poverty on them. That is socialism. That's what a lot of these people are calling for, and they have no idea the irony of it. So don't believe the hype, and don't get so worked up about this that you're not willing to see the other side. And both sides do it. And look, a big part of it is shitty protest tactics. Turn people off right away. Don't associate yourself with Black Lives Matter. Don't associate yourself with Palestine. Don't associate yourself with anything but what you're doing. Focus on the problem at hand. Focus on the solution. The Constitution is the solution. Not ban fossil fuels, not some environmentalist agenda, not some socialist agenda. Focus on the issue at hand. Property rights. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents. Tell me what you think. Probably gonna piss people off with this one, but hey, people gotta hear it. Don't get so caught up in your issue that you accept allies who are your own detriment, who are shooting you in the foot. People like Red Nation who make you look bad, who, they go out there emulating tactics on Black Lives Matter that people hate those tactics. They see you using tactics that, just for a second, Black Lives Matter, a lot of people think that's an illegitimate movement, that they don't even have a case. And I agree with that. I don't think Black Lives Matter has a case. Standing Rock has a case. And they're completely different issues. So when you make yourselves look like Black Lives Matter, people subconsciously lump you in with them. When they see those blocked road protests, they think Black Lives Matter, and they think, oh, that's a meaningless protest. Black Lives Matter doesn't have a foot to stand on. These guys must not have a foot to stand on. But you do, and it's property rights. So focus on that, and we can start working together, and people won't be so antagonistic, because environmental issues, that is antagonistic. If you want to talk about it as an environmental thing, and you're not playing your cards right. Constitution, look at the Constitution. Treaties are the law of the land. That's what we should be talking about. Strengthening treaties, strengthening property rights, not overthrowing the system. So think about it. Be open to the other side. Listen to the pro guys and see what they have to say. They're not coming at it from a place of hate. Maybe some of them. But most people aren't approaching issues like this from an issue of hate. It's an issue of practicality, reasonable, whatever. And I think there's good points on both sides. I side with the Dakota Access protesters. I hope that they are able to stop this construction. I hope this leads to a serious discussion in this country about property rights, about treaties, and about respecting treaties that maybe have been violated in the past. I think this is something that we really need to talk about as a country, and this is a good issue to kick off that conversation. But it also brings up all these issues that I've been talking about of who do you want to associate yourself with, what's the message you're putting out. It doesn't sound like you guys have a solution. It sounds like you have a lot of complaints and unreasonable ideas of how the economy works. So, you know, come at it from a different perspective. Look at other perspectives, and trust that your neighbor they're not acting out of hatred or you know, vileness. People just want what's best for everybody, or what's best for them. So, you know, be reasonable about it. I know people get real emotional about this issue, but there is a way forward if we come together and look at the things that we've ignored in the past as a country that we can move forward together on, like the Constitution and property rights and things like that have been attacked and taken away from us over time by the government. We can fight to get that back. We can fight for stronger property rights. But fighting for socialism, I'm not on your team. I'm going to fight against you. Property rights are what protect you. Socialism will undermine your cause. It'll make everything worse. I don't believe in it. So tell me what you think. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe. Peace and love, gente. You know what it is.